Hey everybody, welcome to Grimm's Forge Gaming. This is Grim, and today we are going to be covering my Stamina Nightblade bow build. And I'll do CP campaigns with this, non-CPs not a problem, BGs like Imperial City, pretty much anything PvP with this guy is a lot of fun. And let's jump right into the build here. Let me buff up and I'll show you the stats real quick. Right, stat-wise, our resistance is 19 and 17k. That's not too bad. Honestly, if we're taking damage on this guy, then we're not where we need to be. I can get this weapon damage up to about 4k, and 4k seems to be. I don't have a problem killing people at 4k. We're getting guaranteed crits out of stealth, and that's been working really well. Also, our stamina recovery at 1300. Maybe that could be more. Honestly, again, I don't have problems killing people on that. Um, a thing that I noticed about this is my magicka. I have almost 20k magicka, and when I was testing out different builds and different things, the times was dying was because I was running out of magicka, not because I was running out of stamina. Um, and so I knew that I needed to get a higher magicka. Um, base stat, basically because my cloak and my shadow, my shade work off of that, and my ability to evade had more to do with this. And so I needed to get that up there. Just my personal play style, and it changed everything for me once I kind of come to that realization. Like, I can have 5 or 6k weapon damage, but I'm not going to have this. And so once we added this, I was able to secure the same amount of kills, if not more kills, because I was in the fights longer, because I had the ability to disengage and I wasn't spending time respawning. So, anyways, magic recovery, we do have that. Our Mundus, I am running Twiceborn Star. Once we get to the armor here, you'll see. And my 2 Mundus stones, I run weapon damage and I run the shadow for the crit damage. We're getting guaranteed crits out of stealth, and so that's great. And we do have savagery here, so we get weapon critical chance increase there. And anyways, jumping over to the armor. For my monster sets, I'm running 2 separate monster sets. I haven't really found a good monster set for ranged stamina DPS. You could make an argument for Velodreth, but something I noticed with Velodreth is the proc from it travels very slowly, and for me, I'm hopping in and out of stealth, sniping people, and more times than not, the Velodreth proc was just giving up my location. They might not actually see me, but they can see where the proc is originating from and know that I'm in that general vicinity. Without that proc, I could snipe somebody, and if I don't burst them down, they're they're trying to recover from the initial burst and figure out where I'm at, and they just simply have no clue. And so I realized that was probably the better idea. Let's just mix these 2 things. So we went with physical penetration. We're going to need that, and you can see the tri-stat glyph on there. Also, I'm in all divines. Um, so when you're looking at my stats, see critical resistance 0. Again, if I'm taking damage, I'm not doing my job. And because we run such a high magicka pool on this, I have the ability to cloak and just leave, permacloak basically on this build, or we can shade if I'm under a lot of pressure. I lay down my shade and juke them. I go one way and then hop back to my shade and go the other, and a lot of times that works out great. And if you watch the video that I have released on my Purrfessional build, the gameplay and the BG, there's a lot of examples where I'm getting really high pressure and how I use the shade and cloak to just disengage, kind of reset the fight, and then go back in. Um, that's the biggest plus to a Nightblade. You get to pick and choose your fights if it's done right. So um, So anyways, we're running craws on there, and we want that physical penetration, and then I just threw on a weapon damage set. Also something is we are 5 medium and 2 light. And the reason I went with light is we want that extra magicka recovery. Again, magicka was how we survive, and so light armor. Our resistances are not too bad when we're buffed up, and a lot of people would say, "Man, you're running light armor and you're 2 light, 5 medium, no crit resistance. I bet you get blown up." And it's the opposite because I have such high magic. I very rarely get caught out of position or get bursted down. And the times I do, that's exactly why. No crit resistance and whatnot. But watch the video and you can see how we do on that. Anyways, like we said, we're running Twiceborn Star, tri-stat glyphs on the main pieces, and and we're running max Stam on the other pieces. And then for our second set, we're running Marksman. And I think if you're there, you can make an argument for some other sets, Hawk's Eye and things like that, or Spriggans, for sure. You can do that. But I've had a lot of success with Marksman, and I don't really feel like coming off of it right now. And so we're doing weapon damage on all those with Robust, and then my bow is a Nernhoned, so we want that biggest pop that we can get off of it, and Disease Enchant. Anyways, I felt like Marksman was the way to go. That was the play. When we look at our champion points, nothing in Apprentice, and this is one of the rare examples, and I've talked about this a couple times. I set myself with a soft cap of 60. I don't like to put more than 60 into these fields because of diminishing returns or diminishing gains, I guess. And basically, for me to get from 21% to 23%, that's an extra 15 points in here. I can tell you that because of soft cap. I hit the soft cap on my other builds, and I'm at 60, and that puts me at just under 21. So just to get those extra 3%, 2%, I had to put an extra 15 points in here. And so you can make an argument that that extra 15 points would be better spent over here, and maybe it would for your play style. I don't know. But because we're trying to do a lot of damage to people, this was probably the most amount that I would want to throw into it to burst people down. Haven't had a problem doing it. So 75 into Master at Arms, that's all your direct damage and your biggest hits. And we've got 25 into Physical Weapon Expert, which includes your bows. So we're looking at 15% more on my light and heavy attacks. Precise strikes, here's another example. I really want those biggest hits. Kind of a theme is I know that I'm going to get critical strikes with this guy. I want the damage on those critical strikes to be significant. And so that's why we're running that the Mundus, the Shadow, and we're putting a lot of CP into this. And I believe too that the Khajiit has a passive, which we'll look at here shortly. Piercing, I need that penetration. There's a lot of really tanky targets, and there's a lot of tanky targets with a lot of self-heals right now. And so that's definitely needed, piercing. And yet again, we went over my soft cap here just because we want that physical damage. This is kind of a triple bonus for us. We're doing physical damage, we also apply poison, and we apply disease damage. So I felt like that kind of justified putting the extra points into it. Ironclad, I've got 45. Normally I'll invest 60 into this, but we kind of revisit that whole thought process. If I'm taking damage, I'm not doing my job. I'm out of position, or I'm not utilizing my cloak or utilizing my shade, and kind of hopping out of trouble effectively. And so I can run less on this and be fine. Spell shield, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of resistance if a sorcerer puts haunting curse on me. I don't want it to one-shot me, and so that was kind of a thought process on that. And medium armor focus, we're going to get a little bit more physical expertise, physical resistance. I don't want to be hopping in and out of stealth, and I do this, and so I would expect other Nightblades to do it. But if you notice there's a Nightblade on the battlefield that's causing a lot of problem or a lot of havoc, they become my target. And I'm going to find them and kind of make life rough for them. And I think that's fun. Let's see how this pans out. And anyways, if they are another bow build and they see me hopping in and out of stealth, I don't want them to one-shot me with a lethal arrow waiting for me. So, because that's what I would do to them. I have 50 in a hardy and 50 in a elemental expert, and I have some into thick skin. Although my cloak, when we're in cloak, it drops all dots, so I could probably come off of that. And to be honest, I could probably come off of these and put them somewhere else. Um, I haven't really had a problem with the build to assess this and min-max this. So, and then I have 30 into quick recovery for the healing done. If I were going to move anything around, I would dump a whole bunch into this. Moving along, Warlord. I don't find myself getting CC'd a lot, so I didn't invest a whole lot into this. I could probably even take this out and put it in a siphoner, and then sprinting. I do find myself moving around. If I need to relocate to find a better vantage point over the battlefield, I'll find myself sprinting or, dodge roll with the bow, get the major expedition, and then sprint to really try and create distance. And so I figured let's invest a little bit of points into that. 60 Mooncalf, 60 Arcanist. We definitely need both of those equally. Um, and I didn't have anything in Tenacity, but um, occasionally I find myself dry on Stamina. That's to be expected under the long. Um, you could consider this build a bow gank build, and if I just dropped 5 people, um, stamina it will probably be low. It'd be in that moment where I think tenacity would really pay off. But for me, with my magic at high, I just disengage myself from the fight, hang out for a second until my tri potion pots are back off cooldown, and let my stamina regen do work, and then get back in the fight. So I haven't really noticed it to be a problem just yet. Befouled, we are applying some healing reduction, and I want to make sure that it gets the job done. I don't. There's a terrible feeling when you burst someone down to 10% and then they just turn around and whole block them, pop a couple heals, and they're back to full health. And so I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Shade, we do travel a lot in stealth, and we hop in and out of cloak, moving around in the battlefield, and we bounce back and forth between using our vampire passive and moving at full speed. Um, Now, when you're traveling around just hidden at full speed, you're consuming stamina as you move. And so the shade passive here cuts down on that stamina expense. Um, for me, the way to balance that is I need to kind of assess if my stamina is getting low, or I feel like if I were to have some type of engagement with altercation with some people, am I going to have enough stamina to get the job done? And so, because I have such high magicka and high magicka or higher magicka recovery for the way we use it, I can actually come out of uh, being hidden and just cloak for a while and let my stamina replenish. And so I hop back and forth, moving around the battlefield completely hidden or stealthed, cloaked, just using my 2 resources that way. So that way, when I get to a point where we can fight, we're ready to go. I don't block hardly at all on this build. Tumbling's definitely the way to go, and we are going to be tumbling if we're receiving any type of damage. Normally, and you'll see this in the video, I'll lay my shade down and do a couple dodge rolls in a particular direction, and they're missing a lot of the damage. And then at the end of that first or second or third dodge roll, then I turn around and hit my shade and hop right back to where he's at, and then cloak and reset the fight. And so anyways, that works out really well for me. And something that's important, I think, for Stamina Nightblades that a lot of players don't know, when we're looking at our passives and stuff like that. Make sure you have all your passives. You should always have all your class passives and stuff like that. But what passives here? I don't have these, but there's a reason to that. But generally speaking, pick up all your passives. Pick up all your bow and all your bow passives as well when you're doing this. And we are running two-hander on the back bar, and really I only needed to reduce the cost of rally. That's pretty much the only ability that I'm using on the back bar, so I get that major brutality and minor endurance buff from that. And but anyways, we were going to be talking about how to land crits successfully all the time. And if you watch a video that I did, you'll notice that I'll release a lethal arrow and then hit my shadowy disguise or my cloak. And the reason is sometimes if you line up a heavy attack with your lethal arrow and they both hit at the same time, you can pick up a crit on both of them simultaneously. And so normally the fight's going to be started from a hidden position, and what I'll do is I'll hold heavy attack as my lethal arrow is winding up and getting ready, and I need to figure out that perfect timing to where my heavy attack and my lethal arrow land simultaneously so they're both crits. And so restarting that, I want them both to be crits. And so you start the fight from a hidden position, and if you can time it to get your heavy attack and your lethal arrow to land simultaneously, that's great. And you're looking at crits and then also your enchant procs. So I need Magicka to do that. A lot of people will hit cloak and then they're winding up from cloak, and that's fine. I want to already be hidden when we start the altercation. And I want both of those to try and hit at the same time. If I fail on them hitting, one of them won't be a crit. Okay? And so that's the plan. That's how we're just bursting people down. After I release, I'm already starting from a hidden position. Every time I release a lethal arrow, I hit cloak. And if you're somebody that's fighting someone or you're moving around the battlefield and you get plucked in the head by a lethal arrow and then you turn around and figure out where they're at and they're gone, like what's the counterplay? There is none. Um, you can get detect pots and you can try and find me. You can, and now all of a sudden I'm changing your game plan. You're not actually following the objective, whether it's capture the flag or chaos ball or whatever it is. And so we're good with that. Um, Go ahead and watch the video. You'll see how we're able to snipe people and how we line up our heavy attacks, how we use our shadowy disguise, and how we use our shade. And so that kind of comes to, we've already been talking about our abilities. We'll go through them. First thing I have is lethal arrow. The reason I'm running lethal arrow, I don't think we're buffed right now, but the reason we're running lethal arrows, there's a lot of big heals out there. It's a 13,500 damage. That's nice, but we needed that minor defile. There's just so many heals out there right now, and I don't want to knock somebody down to 10% of their health and then them turn around and recover from it. So we're running Magnum Shot. This is my hard CC. This is also, I get this a lot. I'm sniping people left and right, running up to score, and people start looking for me. And I spent probably the first 2 weeks to a month strategically figuring out where I need to be and where I shouldn't be. Like if I'm down in the middle of the battlefield, obviously, where the fights are happening ground level, that's not where we want to be. So there's vantage points that allow you to look over particular hot spots that are where the fights are going to be. Figuring that out's important. And also figuring out your plan of escape. And when those people do come to you, how are you going to combat that? Am I just going to drop off the ledge, cloak, and disappear? Or am I going to frustrate them? So if I'm up on a ledge and I'm sniping people and they run up to me, I'm not going to leave the area just yet. I'm going to cloak and shoot them off the wall. I might very well kill them. There's a lot of maps where you can kill people shooting them off bridges and shooting them off walls, and that's hopefully is a lesson learned for them. I don't lose that point. I can go back to that point and they've learned their lesson that if I go up there trying to kill this guy, he's just going to shoot me off the wall. And so what's the point? Um, and so that's the thought process behind that. Magnum shot works out really well. It's also my CC, my hard CC, before I do ballista. I am running ballista. I like to be able to lay the ballista on the ground and then continue to go through my rotation and kill, apply pressure. There's so much armor, so much self-healing in the game right now. People can just stand there and hold block and heal through ballista or dodge roll. They just dodge roll, dodge roll, dodge roll. My entire ultimate missed. And so rather than do that, I want to hit someone with a magnum shot and then turn around and put the ballista into them. And you'll see that in the video as well. Um, I am running Relentless Focus. I'll apply this before I engage a group of people, and basically, if it procs, I'll try and use it, but more times than not, the fight doesn't go long enough for me to even be able to use this. Um, but it's just kind of there as this buffer. If a fight does go long and they're still there, they're going to get popped pretty hard with this. And if I can hit cloak before this lands, that's a really big hit for them. So shadowy disguise, and your next direct damage attack used within 3 seconds will always be a critical strike. And so that's why I like to let loose my lethal arrow and heavy attack at ranged and then hit cloak immediately to guarantee that it's a crit. And we're running Camo Hunter. This is how I hunt other Nightblades. It's pretty costly, but it works for sure. When Nightblades come looking for me, I make sure I have this up, and I'll see them hopefully before they see me, and the rest is history. The important thing about Camo Hunter is down at the bottom it says Major Savagery, increases your weapon critical rating at all times. Great. It also says gain Minor Berserk for 5 seconds after dealing critical damage from an enemy's flank, increasing your damage done. That procs often because basically the enemy's flank is considered from one ear wrap around to the back of their head or back of their body to the other ear, and so I could be on the side of them all the way behind them to all the way the other side of them, and it's going to be considered flanking. And so we'll get that additional damage buff a lot of the time. Um, Ballista was my choice. I didn't like the channel time from the other ultimate. I'm basically stuck in this channel and channeling this damage into them. I mean, while they're dodge rolling and everything's missing, I would rather lay down a ballista and clear out, uh, reset the fight, or set down a ballista, CC them, and then continue my rotation into them. Hands down, ballista is the better way to go in my opinion. So looking on my back bar, so I have Veiled Strike right now. It's the Magicamorph, and I literally only have this on my bar for the while slotted, your movement speed while sneaking or invisible is increased by 24%. I think that goes up 25%. It's important to know that my second ability, Channeled Acceleration, for 36 seconds I gain Major Expedition. So I can move around the battlefield at 30% additional speed and add 25 on top to it. In stealth, I have 55% additional movement speed. So I can relocate myself across the map to a better vantage point if the fight is changing from one hotspot to the other, and that's very important. It's also important to notice or to note that your stamina consumption while you're moving hidden or while you're moving stealth is not based on time duration. It's based on the travel, the distance moved. And if at 55% movement speed, I can burn through stamina pretty fast. So you need to keep an eye on that. Yes, you can relocate very quickly to a new area, but are you going to have enough gas in the tank to do anything when you get there? So be cognitive of that. And we are using shadow image. I spend so much time on my bow bar that I haven't been able to hit max level on this, and to be honest, doesn't really bother me. I could take the time to level this out, but it's whatever. Um, this shade, before I was running fear, and basically the thought process was if they come looking for me or come to try and find me, or if someone gets a jump on me, I'm going to do a fear, and then I'm going to cloak and leave. And a lot of times, the first thing that happens when you fear people is they CC break it and they're looking for you immediately. You haven't even left the vicinity yet because they were real quick to CC the fear, and now they're laying down their AoEs and you don't have enough distance between you and them. And so I made the switch to shadow image and I started playing around with that, and the distance or gap, even though they nerfed it and you cannot cover as much distance as you used to be able to with this, um, it's still, well, it says 28 meters. So um, I haven't noticed, what I have noticed is this. This beats fear for me hands down in my playstyle because I can cover distance, because I can juke people easily. I run 7 steps in one direction while they're putting pressure into me, drop my shade, and then dodge roll twice the opposite direction, then hit my shade and I'm gone. You'll see that in my Purrfessional video for my bow build, and you'll see that in my Mandalorian build for my stamina Nightblade. Same application. Lay your shade down, go in one direction, go right back to it and go the other, and you've created the space you need. So um, shadow image was definitely the way to go, or definitely the play. Something else too, as a small side bonus, this guy does a little bit of damage, not much, nothing to be impressed about. It doesn't break you out of stealth. Um, but the attack applies minor maim. So the target that you initially trigger it with, they're going to be doing 15% less damage on you. So if when I lay my shade down and I dodge roll, and they lay a real heavy, they hit a subterranean assault and whatever else, that might be the difference maker between me surviving that and not, is that minor maim that my shadow image applied to them in just that brief second. So we are running Resolving Vigor. The tooltip on this, we'll look at each one of these tooltips. Gets better, but you can't beat 14,000, 15,000 health over 4 seconds, and then we're running our rally. On my back bar, I have in-cap strike, and you can probably run the Sigic Order undo, and then there's a morph to that. You could probably run that for the damage mitigation, but to be honest, for me, that wasn't really needed. The reason being is I'm not hanging out. I'm not going to stand here and fight this guy 1v1 or 1vx on my two-handed bar. If I'm on my two-handed bar, I'm either moving around the battlefield because of these, or I'm dodge rolling, laying down my shade, hitting my heels and going back to my shade, and then switching to my bow bar and stealthing away or cloaking away. That said, there are times where my bow ultimate is not up, and this has such a low cost at 70 ultimate, in cap is up, and maybe I have enough ultimate to where it's applying the silence as well. There are times where I might hit this on somebody, then switch to my bow bar, CC them, and then hit them with a big lethal arrow and finish them. And I'll do that as opposed to hoping to CC him and drop a ballista and then watch him dodge roll around and everything miss. So, um, anyways, let me buff up. We'll look at a couple of the things here real quick that matter. Just looking at the tooltips here, so 13 and a half, 7 and a half, just under 70,000 damage on the ballista, and we're at just under 16,000 health over 4 seconds. So that's that. As far as potions and stuff like that we like to use, tripod stat potions are the way to go. I'm going to need stamina and I'm going to need magicka. And if you watch the video, these tri-stat pots really save my butt. If I'm if I'm just doing dungeons and stuff, I find myself using the Magicka potions more than anything else, and that's just for the cloak and stuff like that. I rarely run dungeons on this guy. He's set up for a single target build. Not that I couldn't switch him over to do some AoE and be helpful in dungeons, but um, I really like PvP and burning single target down and on to the next. Let's line them up. And there's a really good clip in the video that I have on this build where I think there's like several guys out in front of us, and by the end of it, all of them are dead. And it really kind of shows the damage that it can do. And one other note too, I think it's an underutilized armor set, is Twiceborn Star. I've actually had people say, they laugh, why would you run with that? That's stupid. And everyone has their own playstyle, and this just fits my playstyle so well. I needed the extra magicka. I needed those max stats. I needed the health. I needed the stam, and I needed the magicka. Fits my playstyle perfectly. And having the access to both those Mundus stones, the weapon damage and the crit, that's an extra 353 weapon damage for this build, and an extra 19% critical damage. Talking about some other things too. Um, Armor set. So we had talked about being light armor. You'll want these first three passives, and this was the one. Basically, I get an extra 8% magic regen because I'm running those two light armor pieces, so I'm good with that. And then all five of those. I am a vampire, and I didn't go with savage feeding. I don't even need it, but I do run with the passives. Again, I'm really interested to see how the vampire bar shapes up after Heroine, or the next expansion. They talked about revamping the vampire, pun intended. In Sigic Order line, I do run Channeled Acceleration, and you might as well pick up the passives for that. You get the damage shield, that's great. And Undaunted, like I said, I don't do dungeons with this guy much, but if I were to unlock these, there would be additional stats, so the stats would only get better. Plus, if you saw, my gear is purple, and that video that I did for this, you check it out. He's in purple gear. I do have a yellow bow, but and he has some gold gear, but nothing special. And we still have some abilities that we could pick up on this guy. And racial passives. Health recovery is kind of lost on this build because he is a vampire. But your magic and stamina recovery is increased by 85. That's great. I need both of those for my playstyle. Increase your max health, great. Magicka and stamina, so more max stat. And increase your critical damage and critical healing. So the Mundus that I'm using is 19% crit damage. This is additional crit damage, so we're at 29% additional crit damage with just those two things. So, and increase your detection radius and stealth by 3. I'm hoping that usually that's why I find the Nightblades that before they find me. So, and there are some really good Nightblades out there, so I'm not knocking anybody at all. Just um, the racial passive for this is kind of set up for me to go Nightblade hunting. That's fun for me. So I usually take a peek at who's doing really well in the BGs, and I try and make them a target and see if I can make them make life hell for them. So we covered the CP, we covered the stats, we covered the build, and I think the last thing is probably food, which we were looking at, and I am using the Sugar Skull, Bewitched Sugar Skull for the max stat, and then it has a little bit of health recovery, and that is the build, everybody. Thank you.